Microsoft Excel is used by a variety of professionals today to import, process, and analyze data. With all added capabilities, it became a de facto platform for data analytics of medium to large-size data sets. Due to companies relying more and more on Excel to answer critical business questions, many jobs utilize Excel and require passing of Excel assessment test as part of the hiring process. This is why we put together this video training to help you get prepared and pass the test.
Hi there, this is Vadim Michalenko, and in this video I'll share with you how to pass an employment assessment test. In this video, I will share with you sample questions we see on the tests. I will have some questions for you to try, and I'll show you tips, tricks, and hacks on how to get ready and pass the test. I will also share with you some additional test resources that might benefit you and might help you to get ready for the test quickly.
Depending upon the position candidate is applying for, you are most likely to face a pre-employment Excel test with various levels of difficulty. Today's Excel employment assessment tests can be categorized into at least 3 levels of difficulties: basic Excel test, intermediate Excel test, and advanced Excel test.
Let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Vadim Michalenko, and I have MBA and master's degree in computer science. I have been helping people for more than 25 years to get hired and find jobs. I have founded howtoanalyzedata.net website with only intent to help people get employment. This site helped a lot of people, and I'm pretty sure it will help you as well.
I'm about to show you top Excel assessment test questions we see being used on the tests today. These questions are in no particular order, so make sure to watch the entire video from the beginning to end to test your Excel knowledge and get ready for the test. I will also provide you with answers, explanation, and walkthroughs in Microsoft Excel to get you ready for the real test. Along the way, I will share with you some tips, tricks, hacks, and techniques on how to best prepare and pass the test. I also encourage you to check the description of this video to take advantage of the discounted premium resources to get prepared faster. In this video, you will learn everything you need to know to be successful on Excel assessment test. Knowing answers to these questions helped a lot of people, and I'm pretty sure they will help you as well. Take a moment to click the subscribe button at the bottom of the screen and make sure to share, like, comment, and ask me any questions. I'm happy to answer every question I receive. And now, let's go ahead and get started. Now let's look at the very tricky Excel assessment test question, which tests your knowledge of sorting and filtering. You need to configure Excel values, look at the screenshot, to show field names which are not required and include Excel data format number. Which of the below choices will not reach this objective? You have to love these negative questions, but you have to pay attention not to reach this objective, which means that 3 of the choices do reach this objective and 1 choice does not. What you see here in the data, you see 4 columns of Excel worksheet, and then you have values here. Some of the rows are highlighted in the blue color and some of the rows are not highlighted. And obviously choice C has the option of selecting by color and no fill. 4 choices here as usual. Which one do you think is right? Let's jump to Microsoft Excel here and I'll walk you through the answers. I have choices side by side with Excel data. What we have here is we have 4 options. Let's go to option 1. Custom sort of the table area by column C as A to Z and then by column D as Z to A. To accomplish this, we need to select the entire set of data in the range, and then we go to the sort and filtering and then choose custom sort. When dialog box shows up, we need to first select column C, which is a required field, and then we add an order of A to Z, which is the order by default. Then we have to add an additional level here, and then we choose option of column D, which is Excel data format, and then we add order as Z to A. And this sorting and filtering matches our original required criteria. We've selected required fields as no, and an Excel data format as number, and they show up on the top. Which means that the choice A is not correct, because this is a negative question, and we're trying to find something that will not lead us to this result. Let's undo this custom sorting And then let's go to the choice B. In choice B, we will apply a filter. And what applying a filter means is that you select the first row and then go to sort and filter and apply filter. You see that after application of the filter, we have drop-down boxes that showed up here. And you can select the drop-down box and you have choices for sorting and you have choices for filtering. In choice B, we need to apply filter, which we did, and then sort column C as A to Z. So let's do that. And then sort column D as Z to A. When we completed this, you see that the first choice here was the required field yes, which means that the choice B is most likely the correct answer because it does not meet the required criteria. Now let's undo this by pressing Ctrl Z on the keyboard. And let's go and quickly apply choices C and D to see if they help us accomplish the correct result. Let's jump to the choice C. We already have filter applied. All we need to do is sort column D as Z to A, so let's do that. And then we need to filter column C by color and select no fill option. Filtering by color means that we will only select the cells that are of the different color. In the choice of column C, we have two colors in this column. We have light blue color and then we have no color. So when we select the option here, filter by color, we have choices of light blue and no fill. So we will select no fill. And once we did this, we again accomplished the same results. We have three values that have required field as no and Excel data format as number, which means choice C is not the correct choice because it leads us to accomplish the required objective. And we are looking for the negative answer, which does not lead us to accomplish the required objective. Let me cover one important consideration here, why choice B and choice C are very different, and that's something you should look for when you do an advanced Excel test. Choice B asks us to do one sorting, and then on top of this, do another sorting. And when you do another sorting on top of the first one, it basically invalidates the result of the first sorting. Choice C asks us to sort the data and then filter the data, which is the valid selection because you can do that. You can sort the data first, and then you can apply a filter to the sorted data. And we will see the same pattern in the choice D, which is also lead us to the valid results, which is also incorrect choice. So let's jump and quickly complete the steps for the choice D. I reverted data back to the original state, and for the choice D, we need to filter column D by number. So let's do that real quick. To filter by number, we need to select the drop-down box, unselect all the choices, and select the number choice. And the next step is sort column C as A to Z. And as you can see, we've accomplished required result. So all required field is no, and Excel data is number, and all of these values are on the top. So which means that choice D also accomplishes required objective, along with choices A and C. So these are not the correct answer, and correct answer is B. Let's quickly recap. Choices A, C, and D will lead us to the same results of the values in category K and M appear on the top. Choice B is the correct choice because it does not lead us to the same results. And main reason choice B does not lead us to the same results is because it asks us to apply one sorting on top of the other. Hopefully you've got this one right. If you didn't get this question right, just know that this is a very tough one. And it's not easy to get these types of questions correctly on the test. The best recommendation might be to get a good night's sleep and try to schedule your Excel test in the morning so you have a fresh mind and you can catch all types of tricks that test creators put into the questions like this.
In addition to showing you questions and answers from the real test, I also have questions for you to answer.
Most of the videos on this channel have practice questions for you to answer. Please make sure to post your answers in the comment section of the video. This will allow me to validate your answer and give you the grade. Now let's continue and get you ready for the assessment test. Now let's look at the question which tests your knowledge of formulas and functions and used frequently as part of Microsoft Excel assessment test. Which of the following formulas will not return the exact daily average, like in cell G8? And we have four choices. Average, and then you have a range divided by 5. Choice B, average, another range divided by 5. Then you have G7 divided by 5. And then you have sum of values divided by 25. Which one do you think is right? Which one do you think is the right answer? First thing to do to understand these types of questions and answer them correctly is to understand the data. In this section, you have employee data, and then you have employees' average sales most likely. It doesn't say specifically, but you have days Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then you have some numeric values associated for each employee for each day. Then you have in column G total of these values. So for example, total for Emma is calculated in column G as the sum of all the values of Monday through Friday. Then in the cell G7, you see the average value of totals, which is calculated as average of values G2 through G6. Another important concept to understand here is what is average. An average is the sum of values divided by the number of values. For example, we have totals in the column G, and then we have average of these totals. An average is calculated as a sum of all 5 values divided by 5. And now let's look at the answers in the reverse order, and I'll explain you why. Choice D is the sum of values of B2 through F6 divided by 25. B2 through F6 represent daily values, and there are 25 of those values, 5 employees over a period of 5 days. And then when we hit enter using this formula, it calculates 314.68, which matches exactly the daily average in the cell G8. Now let's look at the choice 7. In the choice 7, we're dividing the average of totals by 5. There are 5 totals, and we're getting the average of totals. And then we're dividing it by 5 as of 5 days. And that should give us exactly the same number. Now let's look at the choice B. And in choice B, we're calculating average of values G2 through G6 and then dividing by 5. Because formula of average already calculates them, and we're just doing the replacement of formula and dividing by 5, it is very similar to choice C, but it gets as an end result exactly the same value of 314.68. And now the final choice, choice A. And the reason I went in the reverse order is because choice A is actually the choice that should be selected, because choice A does not calculate the daily average. And this is why. We have average of the values B2 through F6, so the same range, and we're dividing it by 5. Because we already have daily values in this range, we're basically calculating 1/5 of the average using this formula. And this is why the value will be incorrect. And you see approximately 62.94 is 1/5 of 314.68. And now let's recap. To calculate the average, Excel adds all the numbers together and divides by the total number of values supplied. The correct choice here is choice A, because this is a negative question. It asks you to identify something that does not calculate the daily average, and choice A calculates 1/5 approximately of the daily average. All answers here, B through D, are equivalent, and they calculate the same value. But choice A is different, because the choice A calculates approximately 1/5 of the daily average. Hopefully you've got this one right. And now it's your turn. Please make sure to post your answer in the comment section below this video so I can give you the grade. Here's the question for you to answer. You need to display last day of the month based on the month's ID in the year. Which formula should be entered in the cell G2 to accomplish this objective? And you have 4 choices. EO months and the range B2 through F2, and then G1, E month, and then $B $2, comma G1. Choice C, E months, and then $B $2, comma B2 plus G1, and then choice D, month, and then in parentheses $G $2 plus G1. Which one do you think is the right answer? Make sure to post your answer in the comment section of this video so I can give you the grade. Let's look at this question, which you might see as part of Indeed assessment test or LinkedIn assessment test. How would you add a chart in a cell to show sales data for the last 12 months? And then there are 4 choices that you're presented with. Add an image of the chart in the cell, add comments and add chart to that, hyperlink to the chart on another sheet, and then the last one, add a sparkline, a graphic that shows a sales graph. Which one would you choose? Which one do you think is the right answer? Let's look at this Microsoft Excel example. You have a table which has the product names, Apple iPhone and MacBook Air, and then you have month in the year from January until December with certain sales values. and then you have a space here in one cell where you would need to insert a chart. The best way to represent the data of the sales from January until December would be sparkline. To insert a sparkline, you put the value, the cursor on the cell where you would like to insert it, then you click on Insert, and in the sparkline section there are 3 different choices for sparkline. So let's start with line. You choose a line and then you select the range, which would calculate the value of sparkline, and then you put the location range, which is in our case is 04, so which is correct, and we can click OK, and you see that Excel inserted the sparkline. Another way to insert sparkline would be to use a bar chart sparkline, which is a little bit different. Let's go ahead and do it. To do it, we'll put a cursor into the cell 05 and then go to Insert, Sparkline, and we'll call it Column Sparkline, and then we'll select the range in the row 5, and then we'll confirm that location would be 05, click OK, and then you see that this is the bar sparkline or column sparkline. Now you have different styles here. You see that the context sensitive menu appeared for sparkline, and you have different choices. You can indicate high point, negative point, and use other features, maybe marker colors. So play with those features as you answer the questions. You can always download the practice file, which I give with this set of questions. So make sure to take advantage of that so you can have a way, and there's a room for you for the practice files right here in this tab in Excel. As you might have figured by now, the correct answer is D, which is add sparkline, a graphic that shows in the cell graph. Now, adding an image would not look good as it's not going to be legible, so that's not a valid choice. You also need to understand that the comments in Excel do not have ability to add the charts. And then hyperlinking defeats the purpose of the question, as we're supposed to add chart in the cell. So make sure to pick a sparkline as a valid choice for this type of question. Hope you've got it right.
I would like to give you a tip. There are a lot of different providers that conduct employment assessment tests.
Most common providers that do assessment tests today are Indeed.com, IKM, SkillCheck, eSkills, Kenexa, SHL, and a lot of others. Employer typically requests provider to administer assessment tests, and then provider contacts the candidates to conduct the test. A lot of times, provider has a sample test questions on their website.
Once you know which provider will be assessing your skills, it's a good idea to visit their website to find sample questions.
Now let's look at the typical questions that tests your knowledge of Excel formatting features. Which option can we use if the text in the cell is being cut off and we want to see all the text without increasing the width of the column? And there are 4 choices: wrap text, wrap column, change alignment, and then fill handle. Which one would you choose? Which one do you think is the right answer? If text in Microsoft Excel is longer than the cell itself, for example in the case of cell A5, it continues to flow in the same row. The best way to address this is the wrap text feature. You just need to put your cursor into the specific cell and then click wrap text. And once you do that, the entire text will fit, as Microsoft Excel will extend the cell to fit the size of the text. So this is the wrap feature, and I also have some practice exercises for you. So make sure to download this practice workbook so you can practice answering this question. So the correct answer here is A, which is wrap text. And let's look at other choices that have been presented here in the questions: wrap column, change alignment, and then fill handle, and why they're not the right choices. So wrap column is not a valid feature in Microsoft Excel, and then changing the alignment will only move the alignment of the text, and some text will still be cut off. And then fill handle is used to drag formulas or cell content down, and it's not going to help us. So those choices presented, B through D, are just designed to trick you, and hopefully you picked the right one, which is the A, wrap text. And now it's your turn. Please make sure to post your answer in the comment section below this video so I can give you the grade. Here's the question for you to answer. Which of the following is the correct formula to calculate the weighted average score in cell C8 as shown below? And there are 4 choices here. Choice A, use average formula. Choice B, use sum product formula with the arguments presented on the screen. Choice C is also use sum product formula but with the different set of arguments. And choice D, use average formula. Which one do you think is the correct choice here? Please make sure to post your answer in the comment section of this video so I can give you the grade. Let's look at the question which tests your knowledge of Microsoft Excel charts and graphs. The graph 1 was created from the range A1 through C4. What are the steps you need to take to convert it to graph 2? You're presented with two screenshots, one of the data in the graph for graph 1, and second one, same data but with the graph 2. There are four choices. Hit select data and then switch row and column. Choice B, right-click the leftmost columns and their title and hit delete. Choice C, change the range of the graph to A2 through C4, and then choice D, change the number format of range A1 through A4 and range B1 through C1 to text and reinsert the chart. Which one do you think is right? To better understand the answer to this question, let's jump right to Microsoft Excel and take a look at the data. The reason there are four sets of bars here in this chart, even though we only have two sets of data, is because everything is formatted as the number. You see here product titles. You see the header of column B and column C are formatted as the number. And Excel, when inserting the chart, did not correctly detect the values, and even though we wanted to present products and then B1 and B2 cell values as headers in the chart, they were detected by Microsoft Excel as actual values that should be calculated inside the chart. Because headers were included in the calculation, you see this product section, which has one value as 1, which matches B1 cell, and then you have second value as 2, which matches C1 cell. So how would you convert this chart into the other chart that was presented as part of Excel test question? The correct choice here is choice D. We need to change the number format of the range A1 through A4 and range B1 through C1 to text and reinsert the chart. Let's go ahead and do it. I created a duplicate of this data that we see in the original question right in the columns E through G. And you see it also has all the values and numbers. So first step is we need to convert this range into text. To do that, we need to select the range and then we need to select the text. So the first point was accomplished. Second point is a little trickier. In order for us to represent the number as text, we would need to start this number with apostrophe. And once we click enter, you see this green triangle in the upper left corner, which indicates that this number is actually a text. We'll do the same thing for the second number in the cell G1. Now, as we're done with the conversion, we can reinsert the chart. And you see once we reinserted the chart, it correctly represents the values. It only has values for product 1, 2, and 3, and no longer has values for the header of the data. Let's recap. The correct choice is D. You need to change the number format of the ranges A1 through C3 and ranges B1 through C1 to text and reinsert the chart. Answer A is insufficient, as the legend will still say Series 1 and Series 2 instead of 1 and 2. Answer C will lead you to an error and cannot be done. And answer D is incorrect and will yield a completely different chart. So hopefully you've got this one right. And if you didn't, don't get frustrated. But these are the types of questions that you frequently see on Excel Intermediate and Advanced Excel tests.
Let me share you smart ways to get prepared for the test.
One of the smartest ways to prepare is to find out who your provider is that will be conducting an assessment test, and use outlines and sample questions from the provider. The providers might be Indeed.com, SkillCheck, IKM, Kenexa, SHL, and a lot of others. Once you know who the provider is, you can go to their website, find out sample questions, and practice with sample questions. You can also practice LinkedIn assessment test questions on the topic that you will be assessed. LinkedIn test is free. It gives you exposure to the sample questions. And also, you can get a badge that will enhance your profile for potential employers. You can also research the topic you're trying to prepare for online and download ebooks to get ready for the test. Hands-on experience is very important. You can find relevant training and follow along to do hands-on exercises using practice videos on the training. If you have a question or ran into an obstacle during your practice exercises, try posting questions in the comment sections of the video. Channel owners or members of the channel monitor the questions, and respond to the inquiries. And last but not least, consider subscribing to relevant YouTube channels. I encourage you to consider subscribing to online training for everyone. We have a great community of people helping each other to prepare and pass the test. Let's look at the question which tests your knowledge of Microsoft Excel charts and graphs. Which chart among the option is the best for showing time-based data? And the key here is time-based data. So, as always, with any questions related to Microsoft Excel and Excel test, just pay to every little detail on the question itself. And we have 4 choices: column chart, bar chart, radar chart, and then line chart. Which one would you choose? Which one do you think is the right option? Let's look at some considerations and a little description of the charts, which might be helpful. So column chart creates a bar for each data point. Similar like a column chart, the bar chart also creates a bar for each line of the data. And then radar chart is used for demonstrating the data in 2 dimensions. Now let's go into Excel and look at how would we pick the right answer among these 4 choices. So the correct answer is line chart. And the reason it is a correct answer is because that's the chart that best represents quantities sold over time. So let's look at how you can add the line chart here. So you select the data range, you navigate to insert, and then you pick the line chart tab, and then you have multiple different choices. And then you basically will format the chart after you inserted the type that you like. To this chart on the screen, I added the background, I made the line a little bit thicker, but you see that January through June, it shows the quantities that have been sold and how they increase over time. And the important point is it's not a cumulative number of units sold, it just increases over time. So you see in January we had 2 items sold, and in June it increased to 5 items sold per day. And that's what this chart shows. We go from 2 to 5. And keep in mind there is a practice chart for you, so you can practice generation of the chart, and make sure to download this practice worksheet. Now let's go back to the PowerPoint slide, and I'll explain you why other choices were not the correct choices. So as you have figured it out by now, the correct answer is D, which is the line chart. And then the reason it's the correct answer because other choices are incorrect, and that's definitely the best way to display time-based data. So what we know is that column chart creates individual bars, and it's not good for displaying time-based data. And bar chart does the same. And then radar chart is best used for comparing the data, and it's not a good choice for displaying time-based data. So correct choice is D, line chart. Hopefully you've got it right. And now it's your turn. Please make sure to post your answer in the comment section below this video so I can give you the grade. And now here's the question for you to answer. Assume an organization forecasting revenue of $180,000 for the period of 2014 through 2018. Which function should be entered in the cell E6 so it shows income in 2016 as if it was above forecast, or displays 0 if the value is below forecast? And you have choices, 4 choices in fact, A, B, C, and D, and all involve if formula. Which one do you think is right? Please make sure to post your answer in the comment section of this video so I can give you the grade. Now let's look at the Excel test question that is frequently used at LinkedIn or Indeed.com or other types of tests, and tests your knowledge of number formatting. How would you modify the cell so that the cell containing the value 8.856 displays as 9? And you have 4 choices. Click decrease decimal button twice, click decrease decimal button 3 times, click increase decimal button twice, and then use round function. Which one do you think is the right choice? One thing I'd like to point out here in these types of questions, we only change in display value, and it shows displays as 9, so we're not trying to change the actual value here. So keep that in mind as you think of the right answer. So in Microsoft Excel, in the Home tab in the Number section, there are 2 buttons. One button you have increased decimal, and another button is decrease decimal points. I'm going to jump to the correct answer right away, which is decrease decimal point button 3 times. That's what you need to click. So if we go here and then we click not increase button, but decrease decimal points, and we click it 3 times, then we get to the value 9 as it decreases this 3 digits after the dot, and we have this final value of 9 after clicking it 3 times. And there are also other choices displayed here and results that they lead to. For example, display value adjustment, decrease decimal button twice, so we still have .9 after the dot, right? Or increase, we're actually adding 2 zeros, or using the round function, which is, in our case, we're not changing just the display value, we're changing the underlying value itself. And obviously there are some practice exercises for you, so you can download this worksheet and practice with the link right in the description of this video. And as you might have figured out by now, the correct answer is B, which is click decrease decimal button 3 times. And other choices are incorrect, and here I show the reasons why they're incorrect, and we just covered them in Microsoft Excel. Hopefully you've got this one right.
Let's talk about best practices on how to get ready for employment assessment test.
If this option is available and you have a choice, try to schedule assessment test in the morning when you have highest levels of energy. Get a good night's sleep before the test. And please do not take the test if you're tired, since a lot of questions require your top mental energy performance. During the test, read each question carefully, ideally more than once. Questions are designed to be tricky, and each and every detail in the question might be important. If you have a choice, try to answer easy questions first. This would allow you to leave harder questions for the end, but you will get easy answers in and you will get the points for them. Try to validate your answers with more than one method. For example, if you do an Excel assessment test, you can do manual calculation. You can try to use formulas for calculations, use calculator, or use pivot tables to validate your answers. And last but not least, try not to guess the answers, as some providers deduct points for incorrect selections. Let's look at the very tricky advanced Excel assessment test question, which is very frequently used as part of the Excel test for accountants, bookkeepers, auditors, controllers, and very similar professions. Every day, $1 bills as well as 1 cent and 5 cent coins are set aside for charity. Assume that column B and F are automated upon inserting quantities. Which formula can you use to calculate total cash for charity in the cell G15 without adding additional formulas? And as always, there are 4 choices presented: count if, sum, and count. Which one do you think is the right one? To answer these types of questions correctly, we first need to analyze what do we have presented on the spreadsheet. If we look inside Excel, we have 2 sections here. One section is for bills, and we have 3 columns in that section: value of the bill, quantity of the bills, and an amount calculated. So for example, we have $100 bill. If we insert quantity 1 for $100 bill, then we will have $100. If we will have quantity 1 for $50 bill, then we'll have amount of $50. Very similar calculations are for the second section, which represents coins. I added some values into columns B and F to make sure we look at the real numbers. So how would you calculate total cash for charity when you have values in the column B and calculated values in column C and G? Looking back at our original choices presented, both count functions, count if and just count, will never calculate the values we are looking to calculate, because they just calculate the number of coins or number of bills. Sum if could potentially calculate, but we do not have any conditions here, so there is nothing wrong with using just the sum function. Now let's look at the right answer. As we have learned, count and count if functions are not suitable for this situation because they will calculate count and values and not the sum of values. Sum if could potentially be used, but it might be too complex to do the calculations. And using sum function is totally acceptable and straightforward. So what you see here, choice C is the right choice, and this is the simplest choice possible because almost everybody who uses Excel uses sum function. Sometimes you have to use the simplest choice possible to answer the question correctly. Hopefully you've got this one right.
A lot of students ask me, how can I learn quickly? Let's look at all different options based on recent scientific research.
One of the most effective ways to learn we recommend to our students is a mixed mode learning. You use a variety of different resources during mixed mode learning and alternate between them to ensure better comprehension of the material. For example, if you're trying to get ready for Excel assessment test, you can start by watching YouTube videos, then practice the steps in Microsoft Excel, read related topics in the ebook, and then experiment with a variety of questions during practice test. Now let's look at the question that tests your knowledge of Excel formatting rule. What is the most likely the explanation of the green rectangles in the column C? And you have a picture here, and you have rectangles in the upper left corner of the column C in the category. And there are 4 choices as typical. The numbers are formatted as text. A value used in a formula is of the wrong data type. A value is not available to the formula or function. And last but not least choice, the formulas in the cell are different from the values in the same column. Which one do you think is right choice? When we click on the cell and we hover over the green triangle, the error message here is that the number in the cell is formatted as the text or preceded by apostrophe. This is the warning Excel gives us that we cannot apply formulas to these values and we have to reformat them. If you look here in the number section, the formatting chosen is the text formatting. And in order for us to apply formulas, we would have to reformat those values as the number values. So as you might have figured out by now, the correct answer is A. The fact that the numbers are formatted as text is highlighted by the green triangle. Answer C is the description of the error £NA, which is very frequent in Excel, but not relevant in this case. And answer B is the description of the error of the pound value. And answer D is the common error when formulas are copied and then altered, but it is not likely the scenario here. Hopefully you've got this one right.
People contact me and ask what's changed during COVID-19. Let's look at the changes in employment assessment test process that have happened recently.
One of the biggest changes is the fact that a lot of people work remotely, which means a lot of hiring also happening remotely. Provider might ask you to install special software to monitor your desktop activities. They might also ask you to enable your camera to see what you're doing during the test. Another big shift we see is that the questions become more relevant to the position. For example, if you're applying for accountant or bookkeeper job, make sure you know how to import the data, do profit and loss reports, calculate the expenses, and calculate the annual statements. These are the types of questions that you might see for that specific position. Researching the company and researching the test provider always works for our students. Once you know who the provider is, you can try to go to their website to see the sample questions to get an idea what kind of questions you're going to get on the test. It is always a good idea to refresh your hands-on skills and practice before the test. This gives you necessary boost of confidence and allows to pass the test with the higher grade. If you didn't pass the test, make sure to reflect after it. Take notes and develop an action plan to see what the next steps might be to get you the job. Now let's look at the tricky question you frequently see as part of the Excel assessment test. Which Excel test is without VLOOKUP, right? Which formula can be inserted into cell G5 and copied to all the cells of column G in order to calculate the overall price of the items? We have 4 choices here. 2 of the choices use VLOOKUP, 3 of the choices use VLOOKUP, 1 use double VLOOKUP, and the third choice C uses find function. We also have a data here presented, a snapshot from Microsoft Excel, so you can visually see the references made in the question itself. Which one do you think is the right answer here? To better understand the answer, let's jump to Excel and understand the data first. We have multiple columns of the data, and what's most likely presented here are sales of the items. We have item ID in the column A, then we have item description, and then we have item price. Then we have item, which is different from the item in the same row, if you look. So column A, for example, A2 is different from E2. Then we have quantity. Ultimately, this is probably a master for the items, how much each item costs. In second table, starting from column E until column G, represents the actual sales. What we're trying to do in this question, what question is asking us, can we find the item that was sold, multiply quantity of the item to the found item to calculate overall price? What's tricky about this question, though, And specifically for this one, it's asking you to calculate the value in the cell G5. And by default, the first cell is G2, which is cursor's pointing to, but G5 is right here. And all the calculations offered here are for the cell G5. So you have to pay attention and reread the questions. Sometimes they try to trick you and do calculations not in the first cell that's available, but somewhere in the middle of the range of cells that highlighted in yellow. Jumping back to our Excel document, let's calculate the value for the cell G2 first. So for the cell G2, we need to take the value of F2, which is the quantity, and then we need to look up the item from the cell E2 in the range of A through C. So item's price for the item 215478 is $658, and we multiply it by 265. So the correct value of overall price, and you can do the calculations, is $174,370.00. Now if we expand this formula, it will fill up all the values in the column G, and we're interested in the formula in the cell G5. And formula in the cell G5 would be value of F5 and then E5 accordingly to calculate the correct set of values. And this is how this formula looks right in the cell. Now let's recap. The correct answer here is B, which is F5 multiplied by VLOOKUP of E5 and then the range, and then you're looking up the ID of the item is 3, the index of the item is 3. Answer A is incorrect in this case because the last parameter must be false to yield an accurate result. Answer C is incorrect because find is not the right function here to use. And answer D is incorrect since it doesn't set the fixed lookup range using the dollar signs. So hopefully you've got this one right. It was a tricky question, but you see a lot of this as part of intermediate and advanced Excel assessment tests.
One of the best ways to learn is try to test your knowledge periodically. I encourage you to participate in our daily question challenge.
Every day we post a new question in the community section of the channel. You have an opportunity to test your knowledge and validate your skills on the different topics. This is one additional reason to subscribe to the channel, because this way all the questions will be delivered to you automatically. Let's look at the question that tests your knowledge of Microsoft Excel formulas and functions. One of the options presented is not like the others. Find the odd one. So which one would you choose? Option A, we have some function. B, also some function but lists the value. Then you have choice C, which is we're adding 5 values, and then choice D, which is sum of B2, comma B6. So which one do you think is the right choice here? What's interesting about this question, it's designed to confuse you. The question designed to confuse you because 3 of the answers do have some function, and answer choice C does not have the sum function. So you might be leaning toward this one because it's an odd one, right? But really the question is looking at the results and your knowledge of Microsoft Excel formulas and functions. For example, sum B2 and B6 will lead you to one certain answer, same as choice B, which is the sum B2, B5, B4, B1, and B6, right? So same range, B2 to B6, which would lead you to the right answer. Interesting thing is that the odd one is the one that doesn't lead to the same sum of the values, to the same result, which is choice D, because in that choice only 2 values are being added, B2 and B6. In all other options, in all other choices, A through C, all B2 through B6, which is B2, B3, B4, B5, and B6 values are being added, and then it results in the sum. So the odd one here is choice D, and it is the odd one because it only adds 2 choices instead of adding all 5 choices. Hopefully you've got this one right, because that was a tricky one.
Let me give you a couple reasons why you might consider subscribing to online training for everyone.
Knowing latest assessment test questions and answers helps you to get ready for the interview and assessment test and improves your job mobility. We share with you latest questions asked during the interview. You get access to the daily challenge question. You see questions and answers people posting in the comment section of this video, and you get access to other people's experiences. You also have opportunity to help other people by answering their questions. We have a community of great people already subscribed to this channel, and these people are here ready to help you with the challenges you are experiencing. Subscribing to online training for everyone is an exciting opportunity to get ahead in your career. Thank you for your time and consideration, and looking forward to have you as a member on this channel. Now let's continue and get you ready for the assessment test. Here's Excel test questions to help better understand your knowledge of the user entries. How can you restrict users to only select the options from drop-down on a specific cell or range? And then there are 4 choices: conditional formatting, data validation, protect worksheet, protect workbook. Which one do you think is the right one? Data validation is the feature of Excel that used to restrict the values for the particular cell. For example, in the cell B8, if I click the drop-down box, you see only the choices, 5 choices of the products listed in the column A here. And they all gathered from the cells A2 through A6. To configure data validation, you need to select the cell and then go to Data tab and click on the Data Validation. And then based on the choices I've used to configure, we allow values from the list. So that's my limitation, that I only allow users to do the list. And then the source range is A2 through A6, which exactly matches here values of Apple iPhone to PS4. So as you might have figured out, the correct choice is data validation because other choices are designed to trick you. Like conditional formatting is used to format cells based on a specific condition. Worksheet protection is used to restrict user from editing a range or a cell. And then workbook protection is used for restricting users from altering the workbook structure. So B is the correct choice. Hopefully you've got this one right.
A lot of people ask me, how can I help? One of the best ways to help others on this channel is to help answer their questions. If you see questions on this channel that you know the answer to, please make sure to post your answer. This way, you will help another person to get hired.
Now let's continue and get you ready for the assessment test. Let's look at the tricky Excel assessment test question, which we frequently see as part of the tests. Company A is looking at 4 possible activities and will accept them if the IRR is 10% or above, as appeared in the cell E2. What is the formula utilized in cell C2, which can also be copied down to cells C through C5 to produce the required results? There are 4 choices here, all use if formula, and there is a table here which represents the activities. What do you think is the right answer? Let's see if we can nail this question together. Let's jump to Excel and take a look at the data that is presented here. First of all, what is IRR? IRR is the internal rate of return. So you have some activity and you calculate return on investment for that particular activity. It is internal return on investment. So it's calculated a little bit differently, but the idea is the same. We do not need to calculate IRR here, but it's good to understand because this data might be confusing if you do not understand what IRR means. Now let's look at the data. I calculated accept status here, and this is how the formula looks like. We have to use absolute reference here for the cell E2, because as we move and start to project the data and expand it, if we need to reflect this formula for all of the activities, then the value of E2, if we don't use absolute value, will also start shifting. So let me demonstrate. For example, right now, because we use absolute reference, if I am going to expand this formula, it will be correct. It will calculate it correctly. But if, for example, this formula wouldn't be absolute value, it would be just a relative value, and we accept it, it will still calculate it correctly for the cell C2, but as soon as I start expanding it, it will just calculate it incorrectly, because it will take the value from this cells, and here the value is 0, so it's always looks acceptable because 0 will always be less than any one of these values in B3, B4, B5. So let's recap. The correct answer here is A, because in this case of the A, it uses absolute references. Case B is incorrect because it uses relative references. And answer D is incorrect because there is an error in the syntax of the formula here. So hopefully you've got this one right. It's a tricky question. Some of the answers do lead to the correct results for one cell, but because question itself is asking what is the formula utilized in cell C2, which can also be copied down to cells C3 through C5, that's the part that confuses you, and that leads to only one correct answer here on the list.
Can I ask you to do me a favor? If you know someone who will benefit from this material and looking for the job, please share this content with them. I really appreciate it. This will help them find the jobs quickly. Thank you very much.
Now let's continue and get you ready for the assessment test. Let's see how well you know Excel data formatting feature, specifically for custom formatting. Here's the question. Which number format will display the cell A2 as January? And there are four choices. 4ms-YY, B 4ms, C 3ms, and then D 5ms. Which one do you think is the right one? If we look in Microsoft Excel, we're looking to convert from this date, which is in cell A2, to the value that would be in the cell E. And I'm already disclosing you the answer. So which is January, which is correct, right? And you know the B is correct answer now. But how we got here, let's take a look. To navigate from this cell E2 and see what kind of formatting is being used here, we click on the types of the format and then click on the more number formats, and we see that this is a custom format that's being used, and it shows 4ms. And what you see here, there's a sample box here, right, in this dialog box, and there are multiple ways to get to this particular dialog box. But if you have 4ms, then you will get January. If you get 3ms, for example, you will only get 3 letters of the month. And if it's a 5ms, you will only get J. So the key is to know the correct answer here. If we click OK, you see the other choices. A, for example, would lead us to this type of answer. B is the correct choice. C is 3 letters. And D would be just 1 letter, J, for the month of January. And as always, in the same worksheet, I have a practice area where you can just take the data here and practice and have your own formats ready. So make sure to take advantage of this. You can download the practice worksheet by following the link in the description of this video. Going back to the question, the correct answer is B, and other answers on the list just designed to trick you. Here's the question to test your knowledge of Excel formulas and functions. Which function will return the largest value from cell range A2 through A5? And if you look in the print from the screenshot that we see, A2 through A5, they contain 4-digit numbers. And there are 4 choices that you have: maximum for the same range, large for the same range, comma A1, max A2 through A5, and then upper A2 through A5. Which one do you think is the right choice? And as you're probably well aware, you can type the function max by yourself manually by putting the cursor here and then typing max and then selecting the values from this range A2 through A5, and this will calculate after you close the parentheses. Or if I delete this or undo using the quick toolbar, you can also put the cursor here and select the auto sum, and max is one of the functions that used in auto sum, and then it by default offers you the larger range, but we're only looking through A2 through A5, and then you hit enter and it calculates the value. So as you can see, the correct choice here is C, but other functions here on the list, some of them do not exist. Like an example of the maximum function, large will give you an error because there's an extra argument here, so it's not gonna get you the right answer. And upper is used for converting text to uppercase, so which is not the right choice here. So hopefully you got this one right.
If you like the content, please give this video a big thumbs up. This tells us that you need more content like this, and we'll make sure that you get it in the future.
Now let's continue and get you ready for the assessment test. Here's the question that tests your knowledge of how well you know data integration and how well can you write formulas that reference other worksheets in Microsoft Excel. Which formula can be used to get value of a cell A1 from the sheet named value sheet? And then there's an example, value from the value sheet, right? And you have 4 choices. In the first choice, you use value sheet name, exclamation mark A1. In the choice B, you have value sheet minus A1. Choice C, value sheet at A1, and there's no space here, so gotta keep that in mind too. And then choice D is value sheet with the space, and then you have exclamation mark A1. So choices D and A look very similar, but this one has single quotes around the value sheet, and choice A doesn't have single quotes. So what do you think is the right answer here? As you can see here in Excel itself, the correct choice is in single quotes value sheet exclamation mark A1. So let me walk you through the logic here. So we have value sheet tab, right? But because the sheet name has a space, you need to include it into single quotes. And then to reference the value, you always put exclamation mark and then the cell A1, which if we navigate to value sheet would be value right from here, from A1. And there's a practice sheet for you, so you can download this Excel workbook. Just follow the link in the description of this video so you can practice this particular exercise on your own and come up with answers from value sheet as well. And as we go back to the document, you see that the correct choice is value sheet in single quotes A1, which is choice D, and it explains here why other choices are incorrect and what's going to happen if you use those. In the case of value sheet A1, it's going to show an error because you cannot use space, and if you use space in the sheet name, then it has to be in single quotes. This one is just a name, a minus. It's a formula ultimately, but there's nothing here referencing value sheet minus A1, so it's going to be an error. And value sheet without the space, colon A1 is also incorrect because colon is not the right reference to reference the sheet. So I am pretty sure you got this one correctly. It is very unlikely that you will get away on the test without having a question on VLOOKUP function or its replacements, index and match, or question that will test your knowledge of offset function. So let's look at one of those questions that you might get. Which function can return the cell value which calculates the number of rows and columns away from a base cell? And you have four choices which sound familiar: index, VLOOKUP, offset, and match. Which one do you think is the right one? As you might have figured out by now, the correct function is offset, and if you look here in the syntax, it has three required values: reference, rows, and columns. So we have a reference, which is cell A2, and then we need to do offset by 2 rows, and then do an offset by 1 column. So the correct version of the formula will look like this. Offset, then we have base reference A2, 2 rows, and 1 column, and what's going to happen, it will take this as a base cell, and it will calculate location of the new cell, which would be B4 in our calculations, and it will bring the value from B4 into the cell A6. So once I hit enter, it brought the value correctly into the cell A6. Going back to our original question, you see that the choice C is offset, which is the correct choice here. And you can see that index function is not correct. VLOOKUP function is also not correct, and the match function would be incorrect as well because it matches and indexes position of a match in a given row or a column range. I'm pretty sure you got this one right. This was a tough one. This is more of the advanced question, and you need to have a knowledge of index, VLOOKUP, match, and offset, and kind of understand the differences between those four choices. Let's look at the question. What is the fastest way to copy format of fruits table to vegetables table? And you present it here with two tables. On the left-hand side, there is a fruit table, and it's formatted. It has a title row, and it has apple, oranges, and cherry rows, and header of the row highlighted with some areas blanks and empty. But you see the entire table is formatted, so you see the borders of the table. And then on the right side, you see vegetables table, which is just a group text of the same size. And four possible options presented: copy, paste, paste special, and format painter. So what do you think is the right answer? You can't copy the format of the table, you can't paste it, but you can use format painter to do this. To use format painter, what you need to do, you need to select the table on the left-hand side that already contains formatting. You click format painter, and because tables are of the same size, you just replicate the formatting and drag and drop the cursor to highlight the other table, and you see it replicated format of the table. And the correct answer is D, format painter. Format painter is typically used to copy the data from just one cell to another, but also can be used to copy formatting from one area of the same size to another. In our case, to replicate format, you have to click the format painter on the home tab after selecting the fruits table, and then selecting the area for vegetables tables to replicate the format. Let's look at the question how to highlight duplicate values by using conditional formatting. What you see on the screen here is the set of values in two columns, fruit ID and then fruit name. And you see in green some of the values that are duplicates. You see grapes that are duplicates, you see lychee, you see date palm as a duplicate, and you need to highlight all of the values. And there are four possible choices. And you have all the choices pretty much the same, but the last part of the selection is different. You have identify duplicates, you have highlight duplicates, matching values, and then you have duplicate values. Seems like a technicality, but these are the types of questions that you get on the test. So what do you think is the right answer? To identify duplicates in Excel, you need to highlight all the values, and then click Conditional Formatting, highlight Cell Rules, and then click on the duplicate values. And then here in this dialog box, you're presented with the choices that you're selecting the duplicates, and this is the color that you choose to highlight the duplicates. For example, to replicate the question that was on the test, you need to select green field with dark green text. Click OK, and you see that all the duplicates have been highlighted. So the correct answer here is D. First, you need to select and then go to Conditional Formatting from the Home tab, and then highlight Cell Rules and click Duplicate Values and choose your color. Keep in mind that though choices A through C are very similar looking, but they're not the same, and those technicalities is something that you'll be tested on Excel assessment test. Let's look at the question, which function can be used to remove unwanted space from a cell? And what you see here on the list, you see a column A populated with values, and some of these values have multiple spaces. For example, in between words, there's a series of spaces. And 4 choices are presented. And you see the text here is not in English. Some of the words are in English. So you have to pick the function that would be working not just in English, but in any other language. And 4 choices are presented. We have a choice of remove space, clear function, trim function, delete char function. So what do you think is the right answer? And the correct answer is trim function. When you start typing in column B and you type trim, you see this help here that comes from Excel. It removes all spaces from a text string except for a single spaces between words. What you need to do, you need to type the trim function and then in parentheses put the cell A2, which would reference the cell in the column A, and then hit enter. And you see that it removed all extra spaces, and then what you need to do, you need to just drag it across the area using the drag button, which was available right here in the bottom left corner, and then you see that all extra spaces have been removed. Other choices presented in the test are not valid choices. For example, if you start typing remove, or you need to type clear, or any other choices that's presented in the quiz, you will not find those types of functions in Excel. So this particular question relies on your knowledge and understanding that trim function is available, and this is what it's used for. If you have a choice of working and accessing Excel document during the test, you can quickly run a test and eliminate choices A, B, and D from the list because they are not valid choices and these functions don't exist in Excel. And by now you probably figured out that the correct answer is C, which is a trim function, which is used to remove unwanted spaces, and I showed you the format of how to use this function. A lot of times during Excel assessment test, you will be tested on your knowledge of Excel keyboard shortcuts. In this particular question, you're being asked what is the keyboard shortcut of the AutoSum in Excel, and you present it with the 4 different choices. So there are 4 different shortcuts. The first one is Alt equal, Alt S, Alt D, and then Alt A. What do you think is the right answer? One thing to keep in mind here is that there are only 2 keyboard keys that you need to press. For example, plus sign is not plus sign that you press on the keyboard. Plus sign just indicates that there are 2 keys, Alt and another key. For example, equal sign, Alt and another key, for example, capital S. So, with that in mind, what do you think is the right answer? There are multiple ways to trigger AutoSum function in Excel. For example, if you have a set of values, and typically it's in numerical values, like in the column B in this case, you can trigger AutoSum function by just clicking on the AutoSum, and you see that automatically on the Home tab, AutoSum in Editing section, it shows you the shortcut. So for example, if you know where the sum function is, you can quickly find what the shortcut is. And in this case, the answer is Alt plus equal sign. And once you trigger this shortcut, it highlights the area, and once you click enter, it inserts the sum of the values. To learn more about shortcuts used in Excel assessment test, I recommend my PDF ebook that you can download from my website. In this book, I have the whole section dedicated to keyboard shortcuts. You can see that the section here covers Excel shortcuts, frequently used shortcuts, formatting, function key shortcuts, navigational shortcuts, column and row shortcuts, and then control shortcuts. All of these shortcuts have been selected based on the questions we see on the tests. And in addition to shortcuts, you will also find top 50 Excel interview questions and Excel assessment test questions used during Excel assessment test to get you ready and get you hired for your new employment. As you probably figured out by now, the correct answer to the question is A, alt plus equal sign. And once you press this shortcut after selecting all the values, you will get AutoSum function triggered, and then you just need to hit enter to execute it. Very frequently, you're being tested on your knowledge of Excel formulas. And this is one of those questions, where you will be asked which formula is used to retrieve first 3 characters in a cell. And you're given 4 different choices: left, left char, get, and extract. So what does it mean, first 3 characters in a cell? It means that it's probably going to be on the left side. So for a sample of apple, you see on the column C, where the values are highlighted, first 3 characters would represent APP. For oranges, it would be ORA. So what do you think is the right choice here? As you're probably well aware, to get the first 3 characters on the left side, you would want to use the left formula. And when you type left and then in parentheses the cell value and then number of characters you'd like to retrieve on the left-hand side, it actually gets all these characters and puts them in a different cell. So for example, in this case, for apple, we'll get first 3 characters, APP. And we can replicate this formula by dragging the sign here at the bottom right corner, and then it will replicate the formula for oranges and cherries as well. So the correct answer here is A, which is the left A3, and then it shows the number of characters that you're trying to retrieve. Left char is not an existing function. Get and extract also are not an existing functions in Excel. And if you're trying to see if some particular function is an existing function, all you need to do is put the value into the cell and then type equal sign and then start typing, and you see the only function that starts with left is the left function itself. So choice A is the correct answer. Very frequently, you might be asked how to solve specific problem during Excel assessment test. For example, in this question, you will be asked how to calculate total units sold by Jason. And you're presented with the table down below, which shows months, salesperson, and number of units sold information. One of the salespeople here is Jason, but there are also other salespeople. And the question is, what would you use? How can you find out total numbers of units sold for Jason? And the presented choices is multi-sum, sum if function, if sum function, or sum formula. Which one would you use? Typically in Excel, when you have no conditions, you can just use sum function and calculate total of sum of values. In our case, we do have one condition, as we need to calculate units sold for Jason. And for that, we would need to use sum if function. This is how sum if function will look like to calculate the required values. We have a range of B2 through B11, which is the names of salespeople, and we are finding values for Jason, which is the value of A15. And then we're getting the sum of values in the column C with the range of values C2 through C12. So when we hit enter to complete the calculation, for Jason, 361 units have been sold. So the correct value for this question is value B, sum if function, because sum if function used to calculate sum of values when you need to calculate sum with one criteria condition. And this is the syntax of the formula that you can use.
Let me give you a tip on how to plan your time during the test.
As you're probably well aware, most of the assessment tests are timed. One thing you can do to increase your chances of passing the test is to calculate how much time would you have per question. For example, if you have 50 questions that you need to complete in 60 minutes, you can do a quick math in your head. By dividing 60 by 50, it will give you the answers that you need about 1.2 minutes per question, which is an equivalent of 72 seconds per question. Having this information handy will tell you how much time you need to allocate per each question. Now let's continue and get you ready for the assessment test. Very often, you might be asked the question on how to perform specific function in Excel. For example, in this question, which formula you would use to remove a percentage sign and convert it into space. In the example given, you see that in column A, there are values that have percentage sign in between the words. And in column B, the values already replaced percentage sign with the space sign. And the choices presented are replace, remove, find and replace function, and substitute function. So which one would you choose? The correct answer is to use substitute function. And the syntax would be substitute, then you reference the cell A1, and then you're saying that you're substituting percentage sign with the space. The easiest way to replicate the values from cell B2 would be to drag the values down, or you can also use copy by clicking the copy button, then selecting the area for which you would like to replicate the value, and clicking paste button. So the correct answer here is D, substitute function, because this function replaces any unwanted word with the word that you want. The tricky part of this question, and that there is also option that looks very, very valid. For example, find and replace function. But find and replace is the functionality in Excel. There's no such function as find and replace. So you need to be careful and read the entire answer and make sure you're not making the mistake. The only function that exists is substitute, that can make this substitution of percentage sign with the space. Very often, you might be tested on your knowledge to manipulate Excel strings. This is a sample question in this category. Which formula is used to make first letter in a word uppercase? What we see here on the screen, in column A, all values are lowercase. In column B, the same values represented with only first character uppercase. And there are 4 choices presented. A, proper, first upper, left up, and uppercase. Which one would you choose? The correct answer here is to use proper function. And this is the syntax. All you need to do is type the function and reference the cell, in this case it's cell A3, which contains the original value. And you see that the value was converted with the first letter being uppercase and the remaining letters in the word being lowercase. If you need to expand this function, you can use copy and paste or just drag it to represent updated values in all the cells in column B. So the correct answer here is choice A, proper, and then you reference the original value from original cell.
Can I ask you to do me a favor? If you recently passed the employment assessment test, please share the questions that are being asked during the test. This will help all of us learn and better prepare for the upcoming test.
Now let's continue and get you ready for the assessment test. Very often during Excel assessment test, you might be tested on how well you know Excel formatting. One of the questions we see on the screen is in a similar category. How to increase decimals of a value which has percentage sign. And there are choices presented for you and the explanation of what exactly you're looking for to accomplish. For example, you need to go from 76% to 76.25, from 70 after rounding 69.75, and etc. And there are 4 choices presented. So which one would you choose? You see the values in this example are replicated from cells I3 through I7. So how would you increase percentage sign? You actually use this button, which calls for increase decimal. And once you click it once, it increases decimal by 1 decimal point. If you click it twice, it adds 2 decimal points, which exactly mimics the answer. Or instead of selecting one at a time, you can select all of the values and then click it twice to increase decimal points. So the correct answer here is B, which is increase decimal point. And once you see the answer, you need to click increase decimal point value twice after you selected all the range of values to increase decimal points.
Let me share with you some information that you probably don't know.
Based on our recent research, most assessment test providers deduct points for incorrect answers. So it is not a good idea to guess answers during the test. You can ask the provider to see how they handle incorrect answers. If they deduct points for incorrect answers, you might consider skipping the questions where you do not know the answers to. Now let's continue and get you ready for the assessment test. A lot of times when you work with the data from another source, you may need to separate the data into the separate columns. For example, here we see a combination of first and last name in column A, but in columns B and C, you see these values as separate values. So how would you do it? Which Excel function would you use? You're presented with the 4 different choices: text to column, separate function, split function, and split to column. Which one would you choose? And the correct answer here is split to column. To access this functionality, you need to select the values and navigate to the Data tab. Here you select text to column, and it offers you different choices. For example, it offers it as a delimited text or fixed width. In our case, it's a delimited, and delimitation comes with the space sign that we use to separate the values. Instead of tab, we choose space, which is one of the values, and you see this is how the separation and split will be performed. We click the next button, and here we can assign data types to the data, If we don't do it, then Excel will assign general data type, and then we can click Finish. And you see that it automatically replaced the values in column A and column B. And now we have first and last name in the separate columns. So the correct answer is answer A, text to column function. This function is used to separate words that have a separator character, for example, space, special character, tab, or any unique word. Keep in mind that even though we call it function, it is not really a function, it's a functionality. And below are instructions on how to use it. Other choices here in the list, separate function, or split to column, they do not exist in Excel. So you kind of have to know what you're dealing with, and that's what the purpose of this question, to test your knowledge on this particular functionality, and if you have used it as part of data conversion.
Thanks for watching. I encourage you to check out our daily question challenge in the community section of this channel. I also recommend that you check downloads in the description section of this video. Please also check out resources page on our website, howtoanalyzedata.net/resources. If you like the content, please give this video a big thumbs up. This tells us that you need more content like this. I would encourage you to share this video with other people that might be looking for the job. This will help them to get prepared and pass assessment test faster. Please consider subscribing and following this channel. We have a community of great people helping each other to get ready and pass the test. Please leave questions, comments, or suggestions in the comment section of this video. And all the best on your interview and assessment test. Thanks for watching.